Welcome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today with our community lunch hour hosted by the Community Foundation of Central Wisconsin. So today we've got a topic around our major project cycle and our awardees. Congratulations to the Jensen Community Center and the Waushara County Animal Shelter, our major project grantees for 2024. And before we start, we'd like to go ahead and give a thank you to our philanthropy champions, Mid-State Technical College, Century Insurance, Delta Dental, and the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. These organizations and companies are what enable us to host our monthly community lunch hours, and we're very grateful for their partnership. We'll hand it off to Sarah Ross for getting us started.
Thanks, Kaying. Hi, everybody. We're here. It's April. The time is flying by, and we got a little bit of sun this morning over here in Portage County. So hope y'all were able to, wherever you're calling in from, we're able to enjoy that. I think rain's a coming, but it is spring, so that's what happens. I'm really excited to join y'all today with our guests, Sandra Lynn Schmutzler and Jane Fowler, to talk about our major project grant cycle that's going to be opening on May 15th at the Community Foundation of Central Wisconsin. So this major project grant program is relatively new. We have 5 or 6 years in the books of being able to provide this support to the community. We've been able in past years, last year especially, we've been able to work with Jensen Community Center and the Waushara County Animal Shelter. Previous to that was the Mid-State Ameta Center, Lake Pakawa Park, the Create and Farm Shed move over to the convent space at the Grove. And we're here again, ready to take those applications and learn from the community how these larger projects are going to have significant impact for the residents here in Central Wisconsin. So our panelists today, Dr. Sandra Lynn Schmutzler, so she's a doctor of education. She is the president of the Amherst Area Foundation Board of Directors, a strong advocate for the Jensen Community Center, a community volunteer, incredibly prolific, 17-year volunteer for the Golden Retriever Rescue of Wisconsin, and a retired Illinois school superintendent. And then I have Jane Fowler, who's joining us for the Waushara County Animal Shelter, where she is currently treasurer there. And she's going to tell us all about the expansion project for the Waushara County Animal Shelter and what that means for the community. So I think first off, we'll get into a little bit of background about these organizations, the impact that you've had in your communities, a brief history, and then talk to us a little bit about this expansion program and working with the Community Foundation in that major projects area. So why don't we hand it over to Sandra Lynn first to tell us a little bit about the Jensen Community Center.
Oh, thank you. I've only been in the community 17 years. I've been retired from that superintendency for 25, so it's been a while. And the Jensen Community Center has been in the community for 35 years. It was started as a result of a donation from Letty Jensen that has a history behind that. We won't go into on that. But in part of the big $1 million bequest that she gave us, she said 500,000 or half of that donation had to be invested so that we would never be a burden on the taxpayers. So that original building was built for $500,000 and our capital campaign was 1.2 million. So it's been a rude awakening as to how costs have gone up and those projects. We started publishing the Community Spirit 22 years ago. It was a 4-page edition when we first started. And we, after 35 years, have had several anniversaries and then decided that it was time that we really start looking at how we're going to conduct ourselves for the next 30 years. And that's how this project came about.
So take us through a little bit of this expansion here, and I'll provide some visuals so we can keep up with what's going on.
Well, it started out where we have had a musical. We have the high school musicals. We've had Christmas musicals at the Jensen Center, and the stage area. We had originally a 250-seat theater. because of serendipities and things we needed to do. We had to increase the sound booth, enlarge the sound booth. So then we had to take out some seats. So I have to always remind myself, we are now 243 seats in the theater. And with the productions that we've had, the backstage has just not been adequate. The wings to the stage are just too small. And so what we started to do in the original project was to add the wing space, which would have been that stage where you see the stage area, the wing extension off the one side to have props and whatever, and then stage access, because for the kids and players to get from one end of the stage to the other, they had to go behind the curtain very slowly so they wouldn't make the curtain wave. So we have that long addition on the side that would be storage space and stage access, and then also for props and whatever. And then that building would take out, that addition would take out our outside storage space. So we have that very first area where we would increase our storage and have it inside again, adjacent to the building. So that's what we originally, excuse me, started out with. But when we started talking to people, the expression I got was, gosh, there's no pizzazz to that. That's not going to go anywhere. That was the major need. So that has kind of set us back a bit. And we started thinking about what did we really need to do as far as the Jensen Center was concerned, and what were we going to do for the next 35 years? What did we want to do? Well, we're a rental space also. So we have a large community room, and we have quite a bit of space adjacent to the school. And so we thought to ourselves, after visiting places that had theaters within the state, talking to a lot of folks around, business folks, people that other individuals who rented facilities, what we really thought we needed to do then was to expand our space to the outside, kind of like PJs is what everybody was saying to us. So you can go on to the next stage then. So we had a Alchemy Concrete and helped us design a terrace off the community room, which required us, we had just put in new windows, but we had to take out a window and install a door now. So everything had serendipities and dominoes through this whole project. So the first thing that we designed was the terrace. And you can go to the second slide with that, which is an aerial view of this. And there's a huge fire table with that. That's already been built, and that has been paid for as stage one. But we originally said, okay, that's going to be the first thing that we do. Then the other one was kind of a side effect. I was standing in the kitchen and I said, why do we have a smoke alarm here? And they said, for fire. And I said, you mean that if I'm sitting in the theater and there's a fire in the kitchen, I don't know about it? And they said, well, the smoke alarm will go off. And I said, holy fright, coming from a school setting, I was just appalled and didn't realize that. 35 years ago, we didn't need a sprinkler system or a fire alarm system in the building. And for some reason, that just kind of went like this. So that was a no-brainer. We had to add an alarm system, sprinkler system. The issue with that was that we didn't realize when we put in the original estimate and wrote for the grant, is that we also needed a water line, a larger water line, which is as much as the sprinkler system cost. So that was a nice serendipity to all of this also. So we had the terrace now, we had the sprinkler and alarm system, and then we had what we really needed was that storage space too, and the stage expansion. So we titled this whole thing 3-stage expansion, and we've done it in 3 phases. And now we're down to the last phase and working on that. We're at our last $200,000 out of the 1.2 million to fundraise, and the plans for the addition are at the architect as we speak with that. So that gives you a little bit of background with that project.
That's so exciting. And I think a lot can be learned from the strategic thinking that takes place in when you know the need, and starting off with that initial desire to be able to expand backstage space to make that more usable, especially for larger groups of folks. Having been there in the Jensen Center and seeing that the real estate is quite tight, I can see how that would be essential. But then moving into, well, what are the other ways that we are developing the space that's going to generate more revenue potentially for the organization as well. And that curb appeal to be able to have this outdoor space that is really lovely, especially with that fire pit there as a gathering space. And to show off just yet another aspect of the Jensen Community Center with all the different groups and folks that are interacting with that organization on a daily basis.
Sarah, it was a difficult sell because we originally needed that stage area increased.
Sure.
They have the concerts and the kinds of programs that we wanted at the Jensen Center. And it was, to go along with that, when we did the research, then it was like, okay, the outdoor space, the terrace, and then it was a fire alarm system and the water line and all this. 20 years ago, prior to me starting with volunteering at the Jensen Center, they looked at things, I think, what I would call a little bit more piecemeal rather than strategically about where do we want to be in the future. And every time we had a large concert or an event at the center, the women's restroom line went all the way on almost outside. And so what they did is they took 2 office areas and they made it into the bathrooms larger, which they definitely needed, and everybody was thrilled with that. Then they also took, since they didn't have office area now, they took the coat room. Now, if you can imagine a long coat room, and they made that into an office area. We have 3 individuals sitting in that, 4 sometimes, sitting in that area. So that's why we need office area also with that. So I'm glad that this thought was, even though it's going to be more expensive, it's going to be a harder sell. Let's look at what we really need as a large component with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, to serve multiple needs that the center is going to also grow into as well.
Because that's what we're about too.
Yeah,
To do.
that's right. So let's shift over and talk with Jane Fowler with the Waushara County Animal Shelter. So Jane, give us a little bit of the background where y'all were coming from in knowing that this expansion needed to happen, and steps that you sort of took in order to get the expansion in and the additional responsibilities that come with that.
Yeah, so one of the needs that our local veterinarian, Dr. Christina Mott from Town and Country Vet, realized is she would get a lot of patients who would come in and they could no longer keep their pets because maybe it was somebody who was elderly and going into an assisted living, or maybe the owner had passed away. And so there was a need in the county to take surrendered dogs in, and everybody had been using local shelters, Oshkosh, Green Lake, we didn't have a shelter in Waushara County. So she always saw the need for a shelter here in Waushara County. And she kind of had been working on this. And in 2017, she formed a committee, and with the help from the Community Foundation, we started raising funds to start a shelter. So again, fundraising started in 2017. We purchased an old boarding facility that had a home, old farmhouse, and what used to be for boarding dogs. And so we had the building, but it needed major renovations. We were able, fundraising went really well, and then COVID happened. So in 2020, basically our fundraising really kind of came to a halt, and we were able to kind of piece together the additional funds we needed to begin the remodel. And the first pets moved into the shelter. It's been 22. January of 2022, we were able to physically move into our building. So we have really found an answer to a huge problem here with Waushara County, what to do with your surrendered pets. So with that, our community, our county dog catching services, to put it simply, who's going to take care of the stray and lost dogs in Waushara County, which is different than surrendering a pet. And that was done by a gentleman who has been saying, I'm going to retire. And so we knew that this service to provide dog catching services for the county was going to become available, and somebody needed to fill that gap. Well, we have our building, which was the boarding facility, and then we had a garage. And we knew that we could convert the garage into what would be, a separate kennel area for picking up the stray and lost dogs that the contract with the county would cover. Well, that was, like to convert a garage into, usable kennel space was going to be really expensive, but we needed it in order to get the county contract. So, again, fundraisers and asking for donations and penny pinching, we had some of the money earmarked for it, but that really would have taken our savings down to minimal. So we have basically two services we provide: surrendering animals and pets, and then we do work with the Sheriff's Department in Waushara County, and any stray and lost dogs we take in for the stray hold, and then if they're not claimed, they eventually do become they would move over to the shelter side and become adoptable dogs. But it does serve a really important service here in the county. We can reunite lost dogs and cats with their owner, and we have been 35 dogs since January 1st, which is probably triple what they have done in previous years. So yeah, we were able to do it with the grant that we received from the community foundations. Yeah.
And as I understand it too, that also opens y'all up for collaboration when there is housing issues from maybe there's a hoarding experience or something like that, and there's too many animals to fit in any one shelter, to be able to have this expanded facility to then talk across county lines in where we can help out with animal welfare. Is that correct?
Definitely. We have taken in dogs from Green Lake County, Portage County shelters, from Green Lake County Animal Shelter. We've taken dogs in from the Portage County Humane Society, Fox Valley in Appleton. So yeah, we do reach out to other shelters. If we have available space, we definitely reach out to shelters that may be experiencing hoarding situations or overcrowding. We'd hate to have empty kennels when other shelters are struggling. So we've definitely reached out and been able to help out several other shelters in the short time that we've been in existence. And one thing that we do too that we find I think makes us really unique. We love to work with rescues, and earlier this winter, we placed a dog at Golden Retriever Rescue of Wisconsin. We had this amazing Golden Retriever puppy, and he, I've been familiar with Golden Retriever Rescue of Wisconsin, so when we got him, it was taking us longer to get him in the right home. But when I called Golden Retriever Rescue of Wisconsin, they had him in their possession in a foster home within 2 days. So it's a great organization to work with. But another thing too that we like to do is reach out to rescues, breed specific rescues, to just really help us. They're so familiar with that breed, and it's just a great resource to have, because they have so many more resources than we do. So yeah, that's kind of a unique thing that we really do.
Mm-hmm. I think also just to be able to be that connector. So what you're saying is there's, well, even in this small group here, we have some cross-pollination with Sandra Lynn's experience with the Golden Retriever Rescue of Wisconsin, but to also just be the connector in the county to additional resources as well.
Yeah.
Not only just the dog catching contract, but knowing if we have an interesting or a unique challenge or something, knowing other partners within our region that can come in and help with whatever may be the problem.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so there's a little bit of background about these two amazing organizations. So both of these organizations, in a very strange but beautiful year last year, were granted $25,000 apiece. And so that split the pot for the major project cycle. Typically, the major project cycle is granted to one organization each year. And the purpose of that, as y'all are picking up on, are for projects that are going to have large dollar projects that are going to have a significant impact in the community. And oftentimes this is including projects like capital campaigns, for instance, like Sandra Lynn was talking us through with the 3-stage expansion over at the Jensen Center. But the request can be up to $50,000. But but a part of that eligibility is that the request must be below 50% of the total project cost. So if you have a smaller major project that's $100,000, then potentially you're eligible for the $50,000 major project grant from the Community Foundation. But what's lovely is that we at the Community Foundation have been able to work with organizations that really come across the full spectrum in terms of that total cost of the project. Because not only are we getting perhaps some financial support from the Community Foundation and local donor dollars from Portage and Waushara, we're also helping to build up trust because we are an organization that is working with local donors. Those local donors, we're putting money into these grants, these community grants. And so there's buy-in that these are really important to the community. And our community members who are on those grant committees are voting in on these projects, knowing that they'll have that significant impact. So again, if anybody on this call is looking for more information, that's the gist of the major project grant cycle that opens on May 15. And I'm also happy to talk with you more about the opportunity to apply this year. But getting back to the more important people in the room that we have here, I want to talk a little bit about strategies of communication. So when you're doing these larger projects that I'm sure at several points along the way seemed very overwhelming, and knowing like, sure, you know, that $5 counts, that every little bit counts, but when you're thinking about the total project cost, it can be challenging. So what were some strategies that y'all employed in bringing in that community buy-in to really establish, well, I think there's probably trust already established, but to really expand that trust so that folks knew that this was going to be a good investment and they wanted to be a part of it. Sandra Lynn, do you want to get us started on that?
Yeah. This is a tough one because, you know, you look at different ways to run capital campaigns and how are you going to raise $1 million to, you know, whatever. We had to look at our community, and we're a small area here. And we are, you know, just like COVID affected Jane, you know, with their projects and whatever. We had a community that was coming off of 4 years of multiple capital campaigns, one right after the other. First, they had a capital campaign for a $4 million state-of-the-art sports complex at the school. And then after that, there was $1 million baseball and concession, whatever. Then in between that, we ran 2 referendums, and one was for a multi-million-dollar STEAM building with that. So when we said, okay, it's our turn now, maybe with that, and COVID was in between, we already knew from all of those other projects who the major donors were in the area. But we also had to look at the fact that those were all sports oriented. And in our community, we had these small vibes that were saying, well, I don't want to donate to anything sports. You know, we always support our schools, but not sports now. And so how about the arts? So we had to look at those individuals who then were interested in more of the arts and theater and activities, a community center type thing. So I don't know if that answers your question in a way, but we, as I said, we had already identified a lot of the major donors. The other thing that we realized is that we were now in a transition where a lot of those donors were transitioning out, and
Sure.
the next generation was not into philanthropy like their parents were. And that was a different setting too that happened over a period of several years with that. So a lot of our, how are we going to do this was coffees. We allocated $1,000 for coffees and sweets in the morning with the different individuals and groups. And we spent almost that amount of money over a 2-year period of time, telling them what we wanted to do, why the stage was so important, why the terrace was important now, what we were looking for. We always have to advertise and tell people that we don't get any federal monies, that we are self-sufficient, and our mission is to provide the services and the programs and activities at the center while we want to make money, that's not a major issue with us. We just don't want to lose money. And if, activity loses money over a period of time, then we have to rethink where we're going with that. So we want to be able to stay solvent with that. So the major grants to us, going for the major grant, was to support the credibility of the project and what we were doing with that.
So Christine Klessig chimed in on the chat about this topic, and she asked, how would you have advertised the three-stage project if the Jensen Community Center did not have editorial right to the Spirit newspaper?
Well, I'm talking about that. Why don't you show them the last
Sure. Yep.
year? 2 years ago, we started on this. It's always education, and training people. So we started 2 years ago with the community spirit. We published the paper. It's now almost 40 pages or whatever. So we have editorial rights and what's on it. And you'll see on this one, we're now starting the major fundraising for our the last 200,000 for our stage 3, which is that stage addition and the storage area. And the picture, if you show the second picture with that too, shows a little bit about, that's one of our last productions of Footloose, the high school musical, who now, they used to do the musicals every 2 years, and now they're doing it every year because of the Jensen Center projects and whatever. But that's where the kids had to go through. 100 staff members and stage crew had that little space to get through with all of the props and everything with that. So that's one of the reasons we're showing why do we need it. And we say, if you had been at it basically shares, if you had been at the 5 productions of the Footloose, they showed it, they had five, what do you call it, productions.
Yeah.
With that. 243 people. They each heard a little blurb about the stage and, where some of the money for this project was going for. And with that. So we were looking at starting out way back 2 years ago. How did we get the Jensen Center, that it doesn't get money from the state or federal government or whatever? Who donated it? How the decisions were made about what, and we just followed that progression for an entire year, telling them about the Jensen Center, the things we do and whatever. And this last year has been an update constantly about this. If we didn't have the paper, we probably would have had to allocate $10,000 for those breakfasts, for a lot of conversation, a lot of networking. There are a few of us that every time we go out, we're talking about what's happening at the Jensen Center. We've increased the number of productions we've had, the number of programs that we've had. All of those people then go out and talk. So it's been a word of mouth at least this last year with that. So without the paper, Chris, it would have been a lot of word of mouth, a lot of probably mailings to folks, because we have the major mailing list from the school district and whatever with that, telling them about what was happening. But we were able to do it with the paper, and we've kind of processed that with that. Our next one will be sharing about a major donation that we received, which then allows us to only have 200,000 yet to raise with that, which has been pretty monumental considering this is a pretty darn giving community, considering all of the efforts that they've had that have been kind of in the last couple of years. So, yeah.
I found it really unique having moved here to central Wisconsin a few years ago, the strength of these local papers that we have, and they're outstanding. I mean, to be able to have like the Argus, the Community Spirit, these papers that are so frequent and really rich with what is going on in the community. I think there should be a point of pride in keeping those publications alive, and the quality at which we're able to access community news is just really, really awesome. Yes, all hail power of the personal connection over a cup of coffee. Agreed. Or maybe some nibbles, food and drink. It's a great way to get to know people and raise some funds. So, and with Jensen Community Center, it's also high traffic. You know, there's a lot of different organizations that are coming in and using that space in really unique ways. I always think of the performing arts, but all of these other community organizations that just need a gathering space in order to connect ideas, people, etc. So Jane, not maybe having such a high traffic area, what did the communication look like to really drive up? We know there's a need, but
Yeah.
maybe that need isn't priority to everybody. How did y'all strategize your communication in order to get that local buy-in and that local investment to make this happen?
Local newspaper. I mean, our Waushara County, our Waushara Argus has been amazing. If we call up and we're like, could you run a small, picture with a small article about, our fundraisers we have coming up or our projects, they always do it. And they'll reach out to us. The one we have, our local weekly newspaper that you purchase, and then we give away a weekly, the Resorter, a weekly free newspaper, which is 10,000 printed copies a week. And they have been wonderful in even saying like, hey, we'll put this in the free newspaper, which reaches, potentially 10,000 people, maybe not that many, but they'll put a pet on the cover, or they'll run, our article in the free newspaper, which appeals to some of the tourists coming in and out of the area. They'll grab the free newspaper, where our local weekly newspaper is purchased by, the locals. So we really use the newspaper and also our radio. And actually, we've been really fortunate. One of our donors is president of one of the radio stations north of us. So we can do local radio, and we can also do just to the north of us. So getting the word out free has been amazing. Because again, with our shelter, we generally, we are not necessarily open to the public because, having people in and out disrupts the animals, so we don't do a lot of open houses. We don't do a lot of events at the shelter because, again, the shelter's there for the animals and kind of their, peace and quiet. But people, if somebody makes a donation, we always offer them a chance to come and tour the shelter. But getting it, pictures from the shelter out in the local newspapers is amazing. I mean, everybody can see it then. And we do a newsletter. And as you were talking, Sandra, I made a note, like, our newsletter needs to get out again this quarter. Like, we've been so busy, but that's, when our newsletter goes out, the donations come in. So yeah, but yeah, using local radio, local press has been really beneficial for us.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly recognize in learning from all these different organizations that the Community Foundation partners and within our own processes that consistent communication, especially when you're reaching out to organizations, these publications like the Argus, the Community Spirit, the radio stations, if there's just sort of like this constant information flow of what's happening with your organization, yes, that it's on the minds of people to participate.
Sarah, when you made that comment about different groups coming through the Jensen Center with our different programs and activities and rental space, we finally kept tabs of that. In 2024, we had over 28,000 people come through. So we did, for this project, we did a flyer, and I think you have one of the pictures on that one. And what we did it just it's a, 8.5 by 11, I think it is, both sides. And it's the same flyer that we put in the paper. It's the same flyer that we hand out. It's the same flyer that we inserted into the paper. And it's the same flyer that we give out to folks. And then what we did is in the second printing of it, we just put, like, for the terrace, there was a big check mark, completed and paid for. So we tried to conserve what we did so that we could continue to use the same thing and just update it each time with that. I wish that I could say that we had a radio station that did help us with that, but it wasn't. It was basically word of mouth and our people visiting the center, going to the center, going to the theater productions, seeing what we're doing. And the fact that the school is next to the Jensen Center, or vice versa, and the terrace was visible through the construction of all of these parents who came through and dropped kids off and attended things at the school. We were able last year to have the terrace ready for some of the end of the school activities. So that was word of mouth. I think the fact that they see that things are being done, and I'm sure, Jane, it's the same with you, when they see that you're making progress, that you're doing things or whatever that's supporting the community, then more and more people get involved and are interested in what's happening and ask questions with that.
Oh, yeah.
I have that just for reference here. Here's that newsletter that or the one pager that Sandra Lynn was talking about with outlining the different stages.
3 stages with that, the
Mhm.
phases. And then the next edition of this one, we just put a big check mark over the terrace one and a big check mark over the, so
Oh, gotcha.
yeah, so when we printed it again, so we didn't have to redo it, we just
Right.
updated. Yeah. And that
Yeah,
was,
having those tools that can live throughout the process over and over again, so you're not having to redo that, spend energy and monies on a thing when you have a tool that will get you through the whole process. That's really smart. As a grantee of the major projects application, I'm just wondering if you could share a little bit about that experience to let other folks know what that sort of entails, partners you might have worked with in order to get that grant application in, and any advice that you might have. Jane, how about you? Let's get started over here.
Um, w- um, we saw it on Facebook, on your Facebook page that the grant was available. So I quick looked at it and I'm like, I think, this is something we need to look in. Um, made a phone call to 2 other board members and they're like, we'll try it. If we try it and we don't get it, we tried it. We've never received a grant before. So this for us was the first time we wrote a grant and the first one we had applied for. Earlier in the process of beginning the shelter, we worked with a grant writer who works specifically with animal shelters. And she said, you can do it on your own. Don't hire a grant writer to do it. But she said, once you get the first one, but a lot of denials will probably come, before you get that first one. But she said, when you get that first one, they're easier after that. And so this was the first one we had ever applied for. And Sarah, I have to tell you, you were extremely helpful. And, we were so shocked and so surprised when we found out that we were receiving the grant because again, it was our first one. 3 board members wrote it. I mean, but you really made the process really easy. I mean, it was really clear what we needed to submit. The questions were easy to answer. Getting any of the paperwork that we needed was easy. We knew exactly what you were looking for. If I sent in a financial statement that you're like, well, that's not the one we need this. You explain to us what we need. I don't mean to sound modest or bragging, but it was an easy process for us. And I can't speak for anybody else, but and you were so helpful too. I was just, we were thrilled. I mean, this made such a difference in our little county shelter. I mean, it was just, like I said, and once we received the grant, then we had that to go to some of our donors and to say, well, we just received this $25,000 grant. And then the additional money came in from some bigger donors. So it was definitely, it got the ball rolling for other donations to come into the shelter because again, the visibility we got too from our picture in the paper and from, you also promoting that we had won the grant or we received the grant, really helped us to receive more donations. So, but I can't, Sandra Lynn, I don't know how it was for you filling it out, but it was.
well, the board looked to me to write it because I had written grants before, but that'd been 25 years ago. And I was knee deep in coffees then when the grant cycle came around. So Chamomile is a close friend of ours and in our community, and she writes beautiful grants. So we asked her to help us out, and she was familiar with the Jensen Center. It was very, very easy. And we got a lot of support from Sarah and from the foundation with that. And I said, same thing you said, if we sent them the wrong thing, they sent us back, real quickly. We were able to do exactly what they wanted with that. So we were absolutely thrilled because to us, what it did is it gave us credibility too, that what we were doing in our project was valuable with that. especially since it was in such piecemeal things, you know, 3 stages and what are we doing? And, you know, that third stage is not, like they said, there's just no pizzazz to this. This is storage, guys. This is for props. The back, you're never going to see it unless you're in a stage production. So it did help support what we were doing, and we were thrilled with that. So Cam, and she was going to be with us, but had another project come up. She wrote the grant for us, and we'll probably be looking at the visionary one also, because one of the things that I could say about winning this grant and working on this project is that there are so many people that are involved and have been networked in the communication scope of this, is that now everybody's coming up with ideas of what do we need to do? Well, we need to paint the stage and give it another good coat. Oh, well, maybe the carpeting needs to be updated with that. And is this a fire door? If not, why don't we put this up here? And where are we going to put the donor wall? And, you know, they're just, it is amazing the wonderful serendipities that have come out of this, but it is also amazing the number of dominoes that had that when you do one thing, then 4 other things came up that you never even, like I said, the water main cost as much as the whole sprinkler system did. You know, who would have thought, you know, with that. So it's been a lot of regrouping and a lot of thinking. And one of the things that the major projects grant gave us also was a way to I don't know if I can express this. In writing that grant and having to consolidate our thoughts, was able to create more of a focus for us on what we were doing with that.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, I think that I know that the Community Foundation strives to follow best practices through trust-based philanthropy, and a lot of that is keeping our application process as streamlined as possible, and it's an ongoing learning of what information does the committee really need to know in order to feel confident in understanding the needs of organizations, and how best then to make the very difficult decisions of allocating available monies. And then with with my colleague Marley Samuels, who's heading up donor relations, continuing that partnership and making sure that the Community Foundation is a connector with other financial support from other donors who may share similar vision, values, etc., that are in line with your organization and the work that you are doing. And to the point I think that you made, Sandra Lynn, of going through some sort of application in order to just focus thoughts. I think that's probably one of the best things that a grant process can do. Hopefully it's not too painful, but it can give you the tools or the language in order to be able to infuse a lot of different other tools that you have for continued fundraising for whatever projects. I'm wondering if there's any questions from our participants who have joined us today. I saw that there's Nancy who made a quick chat about thanks to Jane. For helping out Jane. She's a professor emerita volunteering with the Humane Society of Portage County now. Woohoo! And from Illinois State University for 38 years. So like Stevens Point, hometown, good feelings there, which is really great. So any thoughts about Jensen Community Center, Waushara County Animal Shelter, the major project cycle, or how you might become involved in this as an applicant, as a donor? What are you interested in? Anyone got any questions? Well, you know where the chat is. I wanted to just talk a little bit about future looking. So at one point, these campaigns will be closed or have closed, and projects under that campaign will be finished, and there will always be something else. So what do you see as the long-term impacts in the community that the work that your teams have done in order to make these expansions happen will provide to the community? Jane?
I'm sorry, could you?
Yeah, I can.
I'm so
Yes,
sorry. I was reading the chat and I'm
I was
I'm not
too.
able to do two things at once today. It's a Monday. I'm sorry.
I was too, which was a great question. So maybe we do go to the chat for
Yeah.
just a second. So, with 50% funding, do you have to have your matching provision upfront before the grant? So I would say no. I think in any uh, fundraising or project that you might be undergoing with your organization. Um, Community Foundation of Central Wisconsin is a great partner to help like kickstart potentially or to like wrap up fundraising. So these community foundation dollars through our competitive grants may help you anywhere on your journey, but it is a strategy to think about in how you are applying for any kind of grant, where you are in that fundraising, being able to leverage local dollars, donor dollars, corporate dollars, et cetera, that have already invested in the program, and to get those key players to kind of like launch that fundraising, or to be able to strategize, hey, we are so close. This is X amount of dollars that we need in order to wrap up. But either way, and anywhere in between, the community foundation can be a partner. Okay. So my question back to you, Jane, is long-term impact. What do you see 5, 10 years out with the expansion?
Oh my gosh. Well, with the expansion, we were able to secure the contract, and that will be a revenue source for us. But we also see where what we've already, the building that we've expanded on 3 months into this, 4 months into this, we realize that there are additions that we need to make. So 5 years from now, we see ourselves definitely needing an addition to our building. Since the property did come with a farmhouse, a 2-story farmhouse, ideally what we would like to do is maybe turn that into a space where right now we rent it out for revenue, but we'd like to maybe in 5 years see where we have the house. We don't have to rent it out, but we can use it for office space. And the other thing that we would like to do is potentially have home settings with pets. So you can come in and meet a dog in a home, not in a shelter, not in a kennel, but give the animals a sense of being in a home. So we'd like to maybe not 5 years, but 5 to 10 years, convert the rental home into office space, and to also transition dogs and cats into a home setting. And then where we could have volunteers come in and sit on a couch with a cat, and you would come in and meet your potential dog and meet them in a home setting and get them out of the shelter environment, especially some of our long-term animals. We've had a dog in our care for over 1 year and 8 months, and he's been in the shelter. And if we could get him, he's doing okay. He's our little pet, but if we could get him into like this home where it's our office, but then he could also live there. And then when you come to meet him, you can, sit on the couch with him. So our long-term plan is to eventually turn the farmhouse into a functional office space, but meet and greet, and maybe also like a transition, home setting, at the shelter property. But we're definitely going to need to expand. I mean, we're licensed for 18 dogs, and there are times that we're getting close to that. And, when we hit 18, we have to turn down dogs, and we only have room for 10 cats. And I get so excited talking about this, but another vision that we have is our property behind us is our solar farm. So nobody will ever build behind us, but that east facing wall, we would like to build out and expand a 3-season cat room. And how we would envision this is to go out with plexiglass, and then the 3 seasons, our cats could be, in this 3-season room where they could just kind of lounge and take in that morning sun. And again, they've done a very nice job of planting wildflowers in the solar field. What a great experience for the cats, just to be in a 3 seasons room, plexiglassed in, looking out, watching the birds and the rabbits. But So we'd like to expand our cat room. We'd like to be able to eventually not have to lease out the home to a tenant and use that. One thing that we're also working on, and I'm sorry if I'm taking up all the time, but we're really excited about this project. Arizona, a shelter in Arizona had a program where children on the autism spectrum could come to the shelter and go in their cat room. And they found that hanging out with cats is very therapeutic. And so I had spoken to this shelter and then I did some research. We would like to have a program similar to that where we could, again, in our cat room, open it up to situations where, you know, twice a week, families could come in, you know, and we'd screen our cats and make sure, you know, that they're, you know, there's actually a screening tool to use, but we would like to open the cat room up to where families with children on the spectrum, you know, are maybe with a need that could be fit working with cats. Cats can be more soothing than dogs. Everybody thinks of dogs as being therapy dogs, but cats can be therapeutic in different ways. Their behavior is a lot more predictable than dogs. So that's a project we're really focusing on. But with that, again, you know, there would be some additional things that we would have to do to our cat room. But that's a project that now that we've completed our addition that we're looking to do next. And when I had spoken to the Northeastern chapter for autism, she said that we may be the first and only shelter in the state of Wisconsin to be doing a program like this. And so she's really interested in us, if we can get this going, to touch base with her and then to, you know, see if this is possibly something other shelters or other rescues could expand. So we've got lots of ideas. We just need lots of money to do all this.
But I so appreciate that you have this vision
Oh, yeah.
to be able to
And
like, okay, we can
enthusiasm.
work towards that. Yeah. And to also like put Waushara County on the map, potentially as for another reason, in how we're like utilizing cats as a form of this sort of pet therapy. I think that's really wonderful. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's, you know, like I said, we put that project on hold to get the expansion done and work with the contract. But now that that's done, you know, we're ready to pick that up again and really go forward with it. Start out really small with maybe just, you know, 2 families coming in, you know, once or twice a week. And then, you know, but I love the idea, the tool for cats to meet the criteria to be able to do this. It's really kind of exciting, but there's actually a tool that somebody had came up with to make sure the cats qualify, you know.
Yeah.
They have to score 25 out of 40 points. So, but it would be really great for this area. But again, you know, to put little Waushara County on the map would be, you know, really exciting.
Yep. That's wonderful. And Sandra Lynn, impact, what's going to happen in the future?
We're thinking Tomorrow River area, there are about 3,000 homes. You know, I don't know how many folks there are involved, but Amherst is 1,300. Amherst Junction is about 300 people, whatever. And we have a 243-seat theater. I mean, we are so fortunate not only to have the community center, but a theater in our area. And that's where, and with my leadership, I want to focus on that theater as well as the rentals so that we have more activities. We not just and I have to explain that, activities in the center and then theater activities, more with the arts, more concert series. As I shared, the high school was having a musical every other year. Now it's going to be every year. We are auditioning right in the next couple of weeks for a Neil Simon play, Rumors. So we're having comedy and drama in addition to the musicals that we've always had at the center. So we're looking at creating more of a hub around that theater area. And the reason being is because, you know, we also have the rental for activities, but let's think of the things that we have, you know, like the making the signs workshop or the flower arranging workshop. Those are things that the taverns, that other groups are doing around our area that we're almost in competition with. And I said, rather than compete, I think we need to focus on what we do best, and is that utilizing that theater more than the few times a year that we do in the past. So that's where our excitement is, where our vision is to go back to the the concert series. We have Twitty and Lynn coming in. And we had such a sellout. As soon as we advertised, they opened up another show for this. So, I mean, we're real excited about those kinds of activities, bringing it to our small community with them. So,
Yeah, having that facility and access to arts and culture, not only so locally those things can be produced, but also bring in acts elsewhere is huge. I mean, I think having that exposure to a variety of different programming, including performing arts, is just really incredible. Well, I want to, we're about to wrap this up, but I want to remind everybody again that the major project cycle this year, that is focus support for large one-time projects that will generate significant local impact. It's for larger requests, including capital campaigns. The request must be below 50% of the total project cost. But if you have any questions about any of this, please reach out to me at the Community Foundation, and we'll get the answers you need. This cycle is the one in our community, in our competitive grant cycles, that does not support continued operating costs or recurring expenses. This is really delegated to these one-time large expenses in order to create that significant impact, as I had said. But we have other cycles. We have the visionary cycle. So if you have these ideas of like, how do we think about creating a more sustainable, financially sustainable organization, and have ways that you might be able to do that, but need time and a partner along the way, we have our visionary grant cycle, which is multi-year unrestricted funding for up to 5 years that we're going to walk beside you. And that's really exciting. So that'll be in the fall. And then January, we have our one-time expenses up to $5,000 for those quick program needs that you might need. So a variety of ways that we can continue to partner with organizations in Waushara and Portage County through our competitive grant cycle, but also through our donor relations and making those connections. Are there any last questions or thoughts that we have for our guests, Sandra, Lynn, or Jane, from our audience today?
I did see something from Christine K about tax benefits.
Oh, yes. So she writes, did you educate folks about tax benefits on qualified minimum distributions? Well, I hope you did.
that's on that flyer.
Yeah, and that's something too that the Community Foundation, we have the expertise in order to be able to talk about those things as well. But that's an important aspect of folks who have some funds and need to be able to spend these funds. Working with nonprofits in that way is great. Kai-Ying, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Sarah. So we just want to highlight some of the upcoming events that will be happening later this year. Let's see. Oh, well, unfortunately, I can't seem to expand this once I've shared the screen, so it'll be a little bit small, but we'll have Joey will be helping out by putting some of the links in the chat as well. So this week, April 16th on Wednesday, we have our monthly nonprofit meetup. This time we have a consortium of nonprofits that are really hosting us. So thank you to Golden Sands, RCND, Central Wisconsin Children's Museum, and Recycling Connections on Wednesday at 5 p.m. And then Sarah, do you want to talk about the spring luncheon that's happening in May?
Sure, we're coming back. We'll be at the Food and Farm Exploration Center on May 2nd at 11:30 a.m. Our keynote conversation will be by Gigi Stahl and Reverend Jane Johnson. It's going to be a great way for women, Central Wisconsin women, to gather and talk about issues that are important to us over some delicious food and some drinks. So you can register online today.
Great. And then for next month, we'll have our community lunch hour focus on summer connections. We'll have some representatives from Waushara, Plover, and Stevens Point to talk about the ways that our community members can give back and get involved, activities you can do to really have fun and enjoy your time with your family and friends. So May 12th, mark your calendars, and we hope you'll join us then.
And I want to thank Sandra Lynn and Jane for joining us today, talking about their experiences and their amazing organizations. I feel very fortunate and have gratitude in the fact that I learned so much from these 2, but also about how they're running their organizations, how they're communicating with the community and all the service that they're doing. So thank you all so much. All right, everybody. We'll see you back, not in May, right? But in June.
In May
We
12th.
will. Oh, yeah, you just talked about that. So see you all in May. Bye.
Thank
Take care.
you. Thank you.